U.S. Open 2023, Wyndham Clark wins. Heading into the final round, Wyndham Clark and Rickie Fowler were tied at -10. Rory McIlroy was in third at -9. Scottie Scheffler -7. And there were 4 or 5 people between 4 under and 5 under, including Dustin Johnson. No one made a serious run. The low rounds of the day came from people that essentially had no chance to win. Tommy Fleetwood shot a 63. Of course, he totally whiffed on a 4-footer for birdie on 18 for a 62. He's a weak-minded player. I don't care what anyone says. He's a choker, and he shoots these big rounds when he knows he can't win, and when he knows he can, when he thinks he can win, he can't hit the shots. So that's Tommy Fleetwood for you, and you can like him if you want, but he's weak sauce. And McIlroy, at the end of the day, he finished second. He birdied the first hole and never had another birdie. He was very fortunate on the 14th hole, par 5, that he can get there in 2. He hit a bad drive, laid up with his second shot, and then the dreaded wedge for McIlroy on the third shot, right into the fescue just above the bunker. And supposedly this ball plugged. I mean, he got like one of the biggest breaks of all time because he's never getting it out of there. And it obviously, when you know he's digging around in there, there's no chance that he's going to have to hack that out. It's just a little bit of a scam. You just know that whatever happens, he's going to be placing that ball somewhere. So he essentially places it up right next to the green and then chipped up, and he had like 7 feet for par, which thank God he missed, because he might have won that tournament if he gets out of there with a par there. But, leopards don't change their stripes, and his wedge game is the weak part of his game, and he never hit a wedge close all day. And Rickie Fowler hit it on number 1, which is a hole that you really need to birdie. He hits his drive to the right, and he parred the hole, and he was fighting his swing all day, never made a putt. And the magic was gone. It's kind of as if on 18, when Rickie 3-putted the day before in the third round, he had like 3 feet coming back for bogey on the 3-putt, for par. And he missed that and horseshoed out, and he damn near had a chance at a 4-putt. He had another 3-putt coming back. So he had gone to 18 on the third round at -11, and Wyndham Clark was -9, and McIlroy was -9. McIlroy was already in the clubhouse, and Wyndham Clark had just saved a bogey on 17, so Fowler stripes his drive right down the middle, and he hits first, and he had a chance to really take control there and be up 2 or 3, but he hit it about 30 feet away, 35 feet away on the green, and Wyndham Clark is going second, and knocked it right on the pin, 5 or 6 feet for bird. Fowler ends up 3-putting. Wyndham Clark ends up getting the birdie, which was just really a huge swing, and it just kind of changed the narrative a little bit, to whereas it was just like a number of people could win at that point. It even brought in like the -5s you would think have a chance, but that was just a big turning point. It turned out it really doesn't matter. You got to play well on Sunday, but like, it was Fowler's tournament up until the green on 18th hole on Saturday. And Rickie's a nice guy and he's easy to root for, but you can argue he's too much of a nice guy. Wyndham Clark went out there and attacked it and got it done, and pushed through and fought the demons. And Rickie was just Mr. Nice Guy, weak sauce all day, congratulating everybody, signing golf balls at the end or whatever. So Clark was pretty aggressive. Just he had the right mentality, whereas you always feel like Rory is just hoping for something to go well. Wyndham Clark went out there and took it, and Rickie, I still think Rickie's playing really good golf the last few months, and he's essentially back. His swing's not as quick. He used to have a really fast swing, and I think he's going to do fine. But you got to remember, nobody has to win a major ever, including Rory McIlroy, including Scottie Scheffler. I mean, Greg Norman, he won 2 British Opens. And that's all he ever won. And people forget how dominant Greg Norman was. He was the last dominant guy right before Tiger Woods, and he was shockingly good. I mean, you'd have tournaments like back then, like not a lot of people bet golf, but like out in Vegas, I remember seeing the sheets where like the favorite in a golf tournament back then was always like 15 or 16 to 1. You know what I mean? And Greg Norman was like 6 when he was in a tournament. You know, this is right before Tiger, essentially. So like it was always just like shocking to see like Greg Norman's the favorite at 6, and like the second favorite's like 15, 16, 20 to 1. That's how good he was. And you know, he gets a raw deal, but he walked right into his legacy at the Masters in '96 when he blew the lead to Fowler, up 6 going to the final round. And I've watched that round many times on YouTube. Masters has a channel on there where they show the final round of every Masters. And Greg Norman didn't even play that poorly, and people don't even realize that Fowler didn't even play that well. It just all came together. There was like one hole, I think it was on the 7th hole. Norman has like 10 feet for bird. He's up like 4 at the time, maybe even 5. Fowler lays the sod over like an approach shot, a very short, like 100-yard approach shot. Basically damn near whiffs on the ball. It comes up way short on the fringe. And so Norman has a potential birdie. Fowler rolled this ball in from the fringe from like 35 feet like it had eyes, you know, like it was destiny. Then, of course, Greg Norman missed. And so then all of a sudden, you know, instead of Norman really pulling away right there and reestablishing control, now the narrative comes into play, like where people can feel it happening. But I mean, if you watch that, Fowler didn't play that great. Norman was a far superior player to Fowler. Fowler walked into many majors, and Norman blew a lot of majors, but he had bad luck in a lot of majors as well. Larry Mize, Bob Tway. I mean, you can almost go on and on. But back to the U.S. Open. So what's amazing about the U.S. Open, it's just like how the cream always rises to the top. Like guys that weren't even playing that well eventually made it up the leaderboard, like Patrick Cantlay. Scheffler wasn't even playing that well all week. I mean, he was playing fine, but he never really could get it going. Of course, on 17, on round 3, Scheffler's like 6 or 7 behind. He holes out from 192 yards for eagle. I mean, that's a 1 in 50,000 shot right there. And then, of course, on 18 on Saturday, 30 feet for bird. So he goes eagle bird to close out. And all of a sudden, because Fowler bogeyed 18, Scheffler is only down 3 heading to the final round. So he has a legitimate chance to win it. But when you think about it, the odds of him even being within 3 when he's hitting that ball from the fairway on 17, it's just like you can't even calculate the odds. I mean, the leaders were at 10, and Fowler eventually got to 11 before falling back, and Scheffler's at 4, and so like how is he ever going to be at 3? And the course was playing a little bit easier on Saturday than Sunday. So the great players just have the miracle shots like that. And I mean, Jordan Spieth's won. Like, I'm not like a real big Spieth fan, probably because I never bet him, and he's just always lurking. And he does weird stuff like that, just, you know, chipping in from bunkers, and you know, it's amazing, crazy stuff that they do. And but the elite players do it, and it's not like, I mean, the journeymen just don't have those magical moments as much. I mean, it's like one. Rarely ever happens, but there's something magical going on with that top tier player, to whereas impossible scenarios, like if you really do the math, they outrun those crazy odds all the time. So Wyndham Clark wins it. Well, of course, you know, Wyndham Clark, he'd been in contention for the last half a year or a year, playing a lot better than normal, and then 4 or 5 weeks ago he won his first tournament. And he did it in style. He battled Xander Schauffele in the final day and buried him, actually. And so he came in. So he was 94 to 1 in Vegas at Circa. I mean, there's 100 places you can bet, including the various states. But, you know, he's a logical candidate to win. And, of course, hindsight's 20/20. He won there. And Rickie'd been playing well. And, of course, Mcilroy is kind of always lurking. So it all makes sense, especially after you know the results, right? But we're moving on. In a couple weeks' time, I think it's 3 or 4 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, they're going to have the British Open. So we'll have another big route. Now this week is on to the Travelers, where a lot of the big guns, especially with the new format of the PGA Tour, they're playing in these big events. So I would think that this week, even though a lot of the big guns were playing well in the U.S. Open. This is a letdown week. There's guys that I think are going to play pretty well, who also played well in the U.S. Open, like, a guy who I think is kind of a weak-minded guy, but this course fits him and he plays well there. Russell Henley and McCarthy played well there, and he played reasonably well in the U.S. Open. I think those two are going to do well. And even Tom Hoge had like a sneaky good U.S. Open, and I think that, or at least for a couple rounds he did. And I think that he's the type that could play well. So I'm looking for kind of an outsider but a logical guy this week in the Travelers. And then we're going to move on. Well, this week they also have an LPGA major. LPGA is interesting. When those women get in form, they stay in form for quite a while, for like 2 or 3 weeks. And you can see it happening on the Champions Tour as well. Like when people can just dominate for periods. Like last year it was Alker and Scheffler. Steve Stricker and Harrington. When those guys are in form, they just blow out the field. And Stricker the last month has been killing it, but he's not playing this week. Padraig Harrington is the favorite. He's under 3-1 to win, which is about as low as you're going to see in a Champions Tour or any golf event. And he was top 20 in the U.S. Open, so yeah, he's like the logical guy. Could he have a little bit of a letdown? Yeah, maybe, but really I doubt it, because he hits the ball as far as anybody on the Champions Tour, and he played really well on the U.S. Open. So it's not really the type of thing like where he can really have a letdown, because they have easy pin placements on the Champions Tour. It's really like a horse shit tour, chicken shit tour. They just don't.
In 2 miles, use the right 2 lanes to take the I-44 East, Oklahoma 66 East exit toward Joplin.
Yeah, well, here I am on the Oklahoma Highway, the Turnpike, so that's where I am, heading east. And so we're moving on. There's a lot of action this week in golf, as there is most weeks of the year. And that's the U.S. Open recap.